Hi there, I'm Nick Hodgson of astrogems.com, and we thought we'd just do a quick impromptu discussion about the place and the potency, the influence, and the logic of whether to buy a beautiful three metal astrological bangle as recommended and referenced in, I think, chapter 16 of Autobiography of a Yogi, a chapter called Outwitting the Stars. And I purchased my first one in 1977, and I paid $220 for it, for a beautiful three metal astrological bangle that has a little bit over 1 ounce of pure gold and about 24 grams of pure silver. There's 31 grams in a troy ounce, so you can say it's about a little over two-thirds of an ounce of pure silver, and then copper of a similar weight. Now, when Sri Yukteswar mentioned the three metal astrological bangle, it would have been dramatically less expensive than it is today. And Swami Sri Yukteswar wore a 9-gem astrological bangle, and he says in the Autobiography of a Yogi, there's a quote where he says, best of all, this is after he's been talking about the three metal bangle, he says, best of all are faultless gems of not less than 2 carats. Well, the bottom line is the discrimination, common sense, logic of purchasing a 9-gem bangle is it affordable? Is it too great a sacrifice to one's budget? There's no doubt that it minimizes or nullifies negative karma if you believe the wisdom and the words of Swami Sri Yukteswar and Paramahansa Yogananda. Of course, no one's saying it's better than meditating properly, than doing Kriya Yoga, than taking the SRF lessons. That's not in the discussion. It's a foregone conclusion that the best thing a person can do for their evolution is to study spiritual truths. Wearing an amulet, a talisman, a astrological bangle is just a friend to the process. And many members of Self-Realization Fellowship wear the three metal astrological bangle, and they were blessed to have purchased one when the price of gold was dramatically less. And if somebody contacts me and says they want a three metal bangle and they're in Self-Realization Fellowship, I will always encourage and suggest that they go to Self-Realization Fellowship to buy the three metal bangle. I make a point of not selling the three metal bangle in a price anywhere near competitive. Our price is probably $300-400 more than the price of a three metal bangle from Self-Realization Fellowship. We do repair them for Self-Realization Fellowship members because SRF will swap them out, which means the member has to pay California sales tax, which is a lot more expensive than what it costs for us to repair it. However, all that said, the three metal astrological bangle now is in the range of $5,500, and no doubt will go up probably by the end of the year to possibly $7,500. Who knows? The price of gold is being purchased by the central banks around the world, and there's a shortage of it to the amount of currency that's being printed around the world. So it's a good investment on one side, but it's a huge expenditure. And the key thing about the three metal astrological bangle is it's more for the physical than the psychological karma. And pure gold, it's 24 karat gold, represents the sun. Pure fine silver represents the moon. Copper represents the radiations of the waveform vibration of Mars. So it represents 3 planets, but it's not, as Sri Yukteswar said, best of all are faultless gems. Now, a 9 gemstone bangle, all gemstones over 2 carats and faultless, in top quality, in top astrological quality, is well past $60,000. which is crazy. It's a huge amount of money, and that's why a lot of people don't wear them. After having researched and worked in this field for, gosh, 40 plus years, let's just put it that way. I made my first bangle in 1983. That's another story, so I won't go there. These days, with modern technology, they can grow crystals. So this is an example. We'll put a photograph in the video, but this is an example of a lower quality, laboratory grown ruby, and it's grown as a crystal. And it's probably of its same quality and character. It's probably at least 1/30th to 1/40th the price of its natural counterpart. The trouble is, of course, natural rubies are glass-filled, heat-treated, melted, fused. They have the inclusions dissolved out of them. There's many different technical processes of cleaning up a very included, damaged ruby crystal, which is generally always the case. And it's the same with an emerald. This is a laboratory-grown emerald cluster. And again, we'll put another photograph in to show greater detail of that. The point is, if you wanted a deep green, faultless, no cracks, inclusions, natural emerald, you're going to pay at least $8,000 a carat. And, you know, one of size, in other words, let's say a 4-carat one. And of course, they grow a lot of emeralds to look like natural that are in fact lab grown. And some gemologists, unless they have a high ratio of chromium in the crystal, think it's a natural emerald. And that is quite a prolific situation that gem dealers prefer not to talk about. This is a lab-grown amethyst-tipped quartz cluster. This is a citrine lab-grown quartz cluster. Most of my lab-grown samples are actually in storage, so this isn't where I live permanently, and I just happen to have some of these crystals here. This is a lab-grown cluster of emerald, deep green. It's actually a B grade, so I haven't cut it up for 9-gem bangles. My point is this. A 9-gem bangle is less expensive than a 3-metal bangle, and a 9-gem bangle represents the waveform frequency of all 9 planets. And so if you can get a planetary astrological bangle for less than a 3-metal bangle, it's kind of could be considered sensible, judiciously, to discriminate and get the same sort of 9-gem bangle that Swami Sri Yukteswar wore. The difference is because they grow certain crystals, the yellow sapphire, blue sapphire, red ruby, diamond, and there's one other one, the hydrothermal emerald. In a lab, you can get large gemstones in a 9-gem Navaratna bangle for less than a 3-metal bangle. And that's a very profound event, a very profound situation that has recently occurred. And it changes the balance on which type of bangle is best for me to get first. If a person does get a 9-gem bangle, we'll give them a free copper bangle to wear, or they can buy one on Amazon for like $30. And pure copper represents Mars, so they're covered for the planet Mars. The ruby greatly facilitates the planet of the sun, the star of the sun, I should say. And there's sufficient silver in the 9-gem bangle, in the spring links. This is the spring, that's pure silver. So there's a lot more skin contacting, pure silver touching the skin than, in fact, the 3-metal bangle. Now, there's absolutely no criticism of the wonderful profoundly generous service Self-Realization Fellowship offers in making the Three Metal Bangle. We only make Three Metal Bangles for non-members of Self-Realization Fellowship as a general rule, because Mother Center Self-Realization Fellowship doesn't want to become a jewelry business to the world. They want to serve their members, and they can't spread their energy too thin and start, making jewelry for non-members. So we step in. A senior monastic asked me, why don't I start making them for non-members? And we obliged. This is starting to do it about 20 years ago. And it's not something we push, but it's a service we offer. But again, I don't believe it's a good idea to buy a 3 metal bangle when you can buy a 9 gem bangle, because 3 planets, more on the physical side of karma, versus 9 planets for a lesser price. And these are not small gemstones. I mean, the pearls I sell will generally always be 10 carats or more. The hessite garnet will generally always be 6 or 7 carats. The emerald will always be above 4 or 5 carats, etc. So with experience of the last 40 years, I've learnt to fine-tune the bangles to make them far more potent, far more effective, based on testimonial feedback from existing introspective customers. So that's the brief analysis explanation. There's another part of the equation I'd like to explain, and that is, how does a 9 gem bangle minimize or nullify negative karma? That's the key. And 40 years ago, I was at an astrological conference, and I asked these astrologers, how do planetary gemstones work? How do astrological gemstones work? And they said, well, yellow sapphire represents Jupiter, and Jupiter's yellow, and so you wear that to minimize certain type of karma regarding prosperity and magnanimous nature and stuff. I said, that's data. I said, I want to know the mechanism of how the planetary gemstones work. And believe it or not, back then, nobody could give me a satisfactory answer. And it was only when I read the words of Paramahansa Yogananda, and I have them on the website, and I'm going to summarize what he said. Basically, everything we do, say, think, is recorded vibratorily in our chakras. And those vibratory recordings stay there until they're triggered by resonation. And that resonation occurs when the planetary radiations travel through the vacuum of space, travel through our body, and resonate and catalyze our karmic return. In other words, you pluck an E string on a guitar and the other E string on another guitar, and the room's going to start vibrating. If you have a recording in you, there can be 10 people in the room who don't resonate to it, but you resonate to it. And what occurs is that resonation is an electromagnetic vibration twin that will pull out a karmic return. This is why we live in a predestined karmic pattern. That's what the horoscope explains. That's what astrology explains. Certain things are going to happen to us at a certain time in our life. Now, you can tweak the matrix. You can play with the equation. You can counteract the predestined event of resonation. It's predestined because the planets are continually moving in a mathematically preordained orbit, and their radiations are changing depending on which house they're in and depending on their interaction with other planetary energies. But that karmic recording in you is waiting at a predestined time to resonate. However, a crystal is a very unique material. I mean, think of the crystal radio. The first crystal radio that was made would pick up, it would resonate to the radio waves, which might have carried a good song or news report or whatever, and could transpose them into sound in the radio. And the first crystal radios did not even use a battery. They were batteryless, but they introduced the battery to amplify the sound because they were too quiet. But that just showed you that this innate crystal in a crystal radio designed by Marconi, which was actually, I think he took the idea from Jagadish Chandra Bose in India, but that's another story, operated to tune in and resonate to radio waves. Well, it's the same thing with our electrical body. You put a crystal, a gemstone, on our electrical field, and you're changing our electromagnetic signature. You're changing our ability to resonate to lower planetary radiations, but you're picking up our ability to tune into better quality planetary radiations because you're supplementing our electromagnetic field, our electromagnetic aura, our electrical field. Without electricity, we're dead, and all electricity has frequency, has radiation, has waveform. So what we're playing with is a sort of an astral world of electromagnetic waveforms, and we're supplementing and strengthening the frequency pattern, the waveform pattern of our electrical body. And I often like to say it's like taking an electromagnetic vitamin supplement, not a physical one, but an electromagnetic one. And the beauty of it, of course, is it's 24/7. You wear the bangle. I've got two on today, but you wear the bangle, and it's super comfortable. It's tailor-made to just fit snugly on your arm. It has these spring links in it, and you don't know you're wearing it after a while. It just becomes a part of you very quickly, and you notice it when you take it off. You notice this kind of like a draining influence. Basically, what happens when you take it off is you go back to the way your karmic pattern is, without the strengthening, uplifting, sattvic influence of wearing it. And so that in a nutshell is a very fairly crude, simple summary of it's much more prudent to wear a 9-gem bangle because the price of gold has gone through the roof and will continue to do so. It's a fantastic opportunity to take advantage of laboratory-grown genuine crystals with an internal crystal axis, with a geometrical internal structure, not a synthetic glass-like chemical mix that might have some of the same chemicals as their crystal counterparts, but not the internal crystal structure. A crystal works because there's an alignment of the atoms or electrons in the crystal in alignment. It's like having the photons in a laser beam. An incandescent light is fairly lacking in its ability to transfer its energy field, but you put a laser on a piece of stainless steel, it can cut a hole straight through it because all the photons are in alignment. That's why a crystal is so unique. The challenge people have is there's not instrumentation to interpret and to measure the unusual energy field of that crystal. Interestingly enough, consciousness measures consciousness, and people measure and feel crystal energy, but we haven't created instruments to quantify and qualify the different types of energy that crystals have. So that's still, in a belief system field, unfortunately. And then along with that is there's a huge amount of hearsay, and I sometimes perceive fantasy about crystals and what they do and what people think they do, and I step away from that. The website Astrogems mostly talks about things that great rishis have said, Yogananda in particular, Swami Sri Yukteswar. And it's very simple. You fill out the form, you get your horoscope, you ask for a quote by email by sending the whole horoscope to the email askastrogems@gmail.com. And then we don't contact you, but if you want, after you've got a quote, you want to proceed with getting a Navaratna 9-gem bangle made, I then look at your horoscope again and fine-tune concerns you may have and identify some issues in it because you've already lived your life up to a certain point. We're interested in making a bangle specifically for the next part of your life after you've purchased it. And then we fine tune that. I generally don't charge for that. I don't charge if I make the gems a little bit bigger, to cater to the karmic return, primarily because I've been buying gemstones for 40 years. I have a lot, and I get the karma back if I am generous or unbusinesslike, shall I say. So that's essentially the procedure. And I do urge everyone listening to consider wearing a copper bangle if you're not wearing anything, especially if you're over 30, 35, when the physical body starts to get a little bit less energized. And pure silver. And gold, unfortunately, is becoming for those with a healthy budget. So, but realistically, you get a 9-gem bangle, you wear it for maybe 30, 40 years, maybe more. You pass it on to your children or a close friend who's going to take advantage of it. The karma comes back to you. It's not just for one life. And everything is mathematically cause and effect. There will be a beneficial return if you do give it to someone who's going to wear it and appreciate it. We make the astrological bangles, I often like to say, like a bicycle chain. They're really strong. They're designed to be worn for much more than 100 years. And it's fun talking to customers from 30 plus years ago, because they've been wearing it a long time, and I really appreciate how they feel about their bangle, the things they say. We've got a testimonials page on the website. That's a great way of understanding what you may expect. If you'd like to pursue the subject further and see how it can influence your life beneficially, go to astrogems.com, fill out the free horoscope form to get a customized chart, which will also include the most beneficial gemstones to minimize your karma.